YouTube fan community, Queen fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. We are here today to talk about Queen's 1975 album, the classic A Night at the Opera, released originally on Elektra Records. I'm going to be talking about this particular copy, but also the 2018 Vinyl Me Please record release as well, just to show off the differences and similarities and how nice of a job they did with that issue. Every time I show a cover with a white background, my video fades out. This was a turning point in Queen's career for sure. At this point, they had definitely been like, a crowd favorite for the first couple of albums, and then Sheer Heart Attack kind of changed that for them. But with this one, they really blew the lid off the roof, so to say. They put just everything into this thing in a very commercial, digestible sense. So let's back up a little bit. Queen 1 and Queen 2, well, Queen, and then Queen 2, those albums, while they are both absolutely fantastic albums, they're very prog-like, very Led Zeppelin-like. Well, not very Led Zeppelin-like, but there's an influence there in the terms of like their fantasy-type lyrics, different realms, kind of conquering things, ogre battles. And in that sense, you get much longer songs that kind of travel a lot and kind of go to different places, and they capture your attention, but they're not very like radio-friendly. And Sheer Heart Attack changed a lot of that stuff. So in Sheer Heart Attack, you took what they would have taken, 6 minutes to do and condensed that into like 3 minutes, and made a very powerful, punchy album that had a lot of pop appeal and sensibility, but still had that adventurous, adventure and spirit to it that was what Queen was known for. And so they took basically all they had known for that stuff, and then in 1975, they were told to go make the best album they could ever make. So, another long story short, they were with Trident Studios for the first couple of albums, which meant that they made a record for a record studio who then shopped the record around to companies to distribute it and promote it, which is a very strange setup. And they got kind of screwed out of that with a really bad deal, and left that. And they're kind of like, they were broke, they didn't have any money. Roger was told not to break drumsticks because they didn't have money for drumsticks. John had just gotten married and he couldn't get a deposit to or royalty to go, buy a house or something. So they had no money. And so with their new management with John Reed, he was like, look, go into the studio, I'll cover it, you make the best album you can ever make. And then they did. They made one of the best albums they ever made. There was so much intricate detail and passion and execution behind this thing. There are so many layers to peel back on this thing. It's unbelievable. The amount of work that went into this album and how much multi-tracking that was done, basically to the point where the tapes must have been ready to fall apart because they're layering so many layers onto the tape. It can only take so much before it starts to have some wear and tear. But this was the first Queen album, for me anyway, that sounds like Queen finding themselves. Whereas they could do the hard rock thing, no problem. But when they start incorporating bits of vaudeville or piano ballads or even a little bit of a jazz feel in some parts, when they start expanding their their genre and their taste, for me, this is where it kind of starts for them. Especially with a track like Bohemian Rhapsody, which elements of it had existed for years, where at one point I guess it was called the Cowboy Song, and when they were making it, it was called Fred's Thing. So it had been around for a while, but anyway, I digress. This came out November 21st, 1975. It was their fourth album, recorded through most of August through November of that year at different studios across England. Came out with EMI, Elektra, and produced by Queen and Roy Thomas Baker. It went to number 1 in the UK, number 4 in the US. It sold over 4 million copies in the US. Bohemian Rhapsody was their first number 1 single when it came out in Halloween of '75, and it wasn't meant to be a single. They pushed really hard for that, and radio stations just started playing it, and it picked up steam, and eventually they had, the record company was forced to put it out basically as a single, which happens a lot with a lot of other bands, and it became an absolute smash. It's one of their biggest songs of all time, and to this right now, currently, as I'm making this video in early 2019, it is I think it's the most played song on Spotify, or most played song from the 20th century on Spotify, something like that. It's a humongously staggering amount of streams on Spotify. And it's one of the most popular songs of all time for a lot of reasons. And that's an absolutely amazing track. They almost signed with Swan Song, which I find interesting with them, having a bit of a Zeppelin influence there. It's kind of cool they almost went with Swan Song, but they went with Elektra instead. All four of them were writing songs at this point, and they all wrote really strong songs on this album, which they had been doing previously, but again, more of a pop orient, more of a digestible, radio-friendly feel, but still having a lot of hunger and desire to make something absolutely new and exciting and fresh. Yeah, incredible amount of detail and work went into this thing. So the first song on here, "Death on Two Legs," is basically dedicated to their first manager, who they really said screwed them over. And years later, the guy wrote a book basically explaining how he didn't do that, but he was pretty much exiled from the Queen camp at that point. So who really knows what happened? But it sounds like he was off buying expensive cars and they couldn't afford new drumsticks. So there was a weird balance there they were trying to figure out. Very acerbic song, very bitter song, really powerful rocking song. So like I said, where they took elements that would have been elongated in other tracks on like Queen 2, for instance, they condensed that to such a hard-hitting, biting, condensed, I think I used the word condensed twice, track. So you get this insane scream from Roger that opens the song. Then you get a bit of piano, and then Brian comes in with this really cool little guitar riff. Then they slam into it, and it just becomes this rock and roll frenzy that it's like hits punch after punch after punch. It's an amazingly heavy, hard song. It's an angry song. But it's absolutely brilliant how much it just breaks new ground constantly as it travels throughout the whole track. It's one of those songs for me that doesn't get old because it sounds so angry all the time that you find bits and pieces of it in each listen that, oh, I didn't know that before. That guitar part's cool. Or that bass line was interesting. Absolutely amazing track that Freddie wrote. But great way to start the album. Then you get "Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon," which is a complete 180. So you go from this hard rocking thing to this total vaudeville thing where, they're hanging out, watching the geese go by on a pond somewhere in a little boat. I mean, just hanging out, lazing on a Sunday afternoon. It's, what you might do throughout the week in Victorian or vaudeville times. And I love that they incorporate that. And they did some of that with their earlier albums, most particularly with Bring Back That Leroy Brown off Sheer Heart Attack. That was one of the first elements of, like, we could do that vaudeville thing and make it into a rock song. And they did that with this too, and it's a couple of songs on here that do this really well. But again, the layered vocals, the breaks that they take, the pauses, the construction of the song. The construction of the songs on this thing, and had been for years, but they take things that change often, but then make it seem seamless and flawless and flow so easily, which is a very hard thing to do, to make a song catchy and memorable, but also keep changing a lot, or subtle changes, which I think is absolutely a key trick to the Queen songwriting, thing, for lack of a better word. Great track. But it leads into "I'm in Love with My Car," which, if you've seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, which is coming out soon on disc, and I think on digital pretty soon as well, it's the joke of the movie. They keep ripping on Roger for writing this song about being in love with your car, and how Roger's saying it's a metaphor and all this other stuff. I think it's a good song. I like Roger's vocals a lot. I like that raspy, kind of rich, deep voice that he's got. And his drumming on this song in particular is really flashy. But Brian does a couple of like harmonic things on the guitar where he hits a couple of high notes that just wail and screech. Almost sounds like screeching breaks, which I think is cool. But, really great vocals in the chorus, when they all sing "I'm in Love with My Car." And the song just totally moves along really well. I think it's a fun track. I'm not going to knock that at all. I think it's a cool song. Then you get "You're My Best Friend," written by John Deacon, and one of my favorite Queen songs of all time. Again, which is also an interesting track because it doesn't repeat the same musical phrase twice. It sounds like it does, but there's bits and pieces that change. If you pay attention, it changes frequently throughout the entire track. But just a really sweet track about, appreciating the one that you're with and how much they appreciate you, and knowing that no matter how bad things might get or how great things might get, they're there by your side to cheer you on or make you feel better, or, just go through life together. It's a great track. One of my favorites. 39 is a very cool song. Basically, it takes place in the future about it sounds like a space colony. I haven't delved too deep into the story behind what Brian was coming up with this track, but nice acoustic track. Brian sings it really well. When they did this live, like on the Live Killers album, Freddie would sing it. But very cool song. And one thing I did want to mention about this is that, the name of the album being A Night at the Opera, and the one that followed was A Day at the Races, named after Marx Brothers movies. And so in 1976 or 7, Groucho actually invited, Groucho was still alive, he invited them to come over to his house, and then they sang an a cappella version of 39, which I think is absolutely cool. I would love to see a video of that, just Groucho sitting there watching these guys singing to him. Like, that would be so damn cool. Sweet Lady, another song Brian wrote. This song is absolutely phenomenal. Really cool timing on this one. I guess they never really played it live too much because it was hard to figure out with the drums to keep up, because it's a weird timing. But really nice, heavy, crunchy, rocking riff, which you haven't really had a whole lot of yet on this album, except for Death on Two Legs. But, from coming off stuff like Brighton Rock and Sheer Heart Attack, where it's like a riff rock frenzy, to get that riff rock thing happen here catches you off guard a little bit because you haven't had much of that. So, that really sticks out. And it's got that classic line, you think you call me sweet like I'm some kind of cheese, which again they make fun of in the movie as well, but interesting line. Cool song, nice rock and upbeat track. And then Seaside Rendezvous, I really like this one again. It's more of that vaudeville, Showtime, kind of thing. Fun little track, and I think a lot of this is mostly just Roger and Freddie on this track, especially during the middle bit where they make it sound like tapping, which is actually thimbles on your fingers on a mixing board. Sound effects like paper over brushes to make it sound like old horns. All kinds of tiny little tricks up their sleeves. They were very creative in the studio. They didn't use synthesizers. There's a big thing on the inside that says no synthesizers. They did it all themselves, which speaks volumes for how talented they were, especially Brian May's guitar work, where he can make things sound like other instruments because of how much detail he put into the amount of incredible work he put into his guitar work. It pays off because he makes a sound super unique to Queen that no other band would ever sound like. If you tried to sound like that, you'd sound like a Queen ripoff. Side 2 opens with the Prophet song, which is a very cool track, very long, changes a lot. Really catchy song, even though it's got a heavy, crunchy vibe to it. And a big middle bit section where Freddie, I think it's mostly Freddie, is doing this vocal thing, like call and response to himself. And kind of setting up these atmospheric, expansions of what his vocal ability can do and how fun it is to listen to that. But then it comes like wailing back with these punches of dun 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 dun. Then they slam back into it again. But really cool song. Then you get Love of My Life, which is absolutely one of the most brilliant songs they ever wrote. Freddie wrote this one. And the harp sound in the beginning is actually, I think it was an actual harp, or Brian was doing, it was. He did note for note. So he wasn't playing the whole thing, through as he would like a harp. He found each individual string and then pieced each track together as they recorded it, which must have taken for bloody ever to do. That's a hell of a lot of work. But he did it, and it paid off because it sounds bloody great. But one of the most amazing tracks ever written. I mean, Freddie's vocals on this are so heartfelt and deep and passionate. His piano playing, I don't think Freddie gets enough credit for his piano playing because he was an absolutely expert piano player, or pianist, as I guess you can say it. His style was so different. I think it was definitely based in classical because a lot of that's how he learned how to play the piano. But lyrically, how he sings this thing, there's a couple of cool movements. There's some incredible notes, like the whole line of "You don't know." How you don't know what it does to me, how it feels to me. You don't know, like that whole part, the way he jumps up in that airy sort of arena of vocal ability, captures your heart because it's something you don't normally hear. To hear a song like that, it's deep, it's emotional, it's beautiful, it's astounding. Absolutely one of the most amazing songs that they ever wrote, and would become one of the most popular live staples as well. That famous Rock in Rio setup where the whole crowd is singing the lyrics and they're kind of like blown away that all these people know this song. Very cool. Good Company is a good follow-up because this is a really nice song Brian wrote. Just about taking care of the ones around you and don't get into trouble, hang out with good people, watch yourself. Nice little banjo on this track as well. Which is an amazing little tiny lead up to the epic Bohemian Rhapsody, which travels through so many changes, and again, it's probably one of the most talked about songs of all time, but I'll talk about it here. Um, to have that, that almost angelic choir in the beginning where they kind of set up the song. Then he gets to this somber, morose almost piano that's kind of just wandering, figuring out where it wants to go, and how the story is trying to be told. And the lyrics, Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled the trigger, now he's dead. Like, it's this deep, like, cowboy song, as they were calling it, but it's a harrowing story. And then Freddie's emotion that he puts through and singing, especially that "Mama" part, is absolutely captivating. You're glued in. Then it kicks in with the drums and some really, whenever you watch the video of Freddie playing it, he would kind of jump, din, din, on the piano. He would kind of, do his other hand over his other hand to kind of go forward again. That's definitely like an iconic sounding piano riff, if you ask me. And, it starts to build up and build up. You get a great solo from Brian, which is absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, the middle bit, which comes out of absolutely nowhere. Which one of my favorite quotes is when Freddie was showing this thing off for the first time, and the song stopped, and I guess the guys were like, "Well, okay, well, what are we gonna do now?" And he goes, "That's where the opera comes in." Like it's such a, from what I've read about Freddie and videos I've seen, it's such a Freddie move to say something like that, which is great. And they pulled it off. Mentioning Scaramouche, Galileo, like, what a totally unconventional, out of nowhere song that blew the lid off what a pop song could be. And but that's how rock and roll changes, when bands are allowed to take a risk. Record companies don't want risks. They want comfortable things that they know will sell because they happened before. That's boring. When bands go out there and do something different, like "Hey Jude," which was one of the first longest singles ever at that point, it did extremely well. It was one of the Beatles' most popular songs, and it's like 8 minutes long. And this thing's also super long too. So hearing those changes and song going completely off the rails to an opera section, and then coming back to one of the most best headbanging moments of all time, as you've seen in Wayne's World, you cannot but headbang your head to that part. It just happens. It's just a part of what it's meant to be done. Then it trails off at the end to a nice quiet refrain to come back where it was in the beginning, and then it's over with a gong. It's an absolutely incredible track. Easily one of the best things they've ever done, and I think one of the best songs of the 20th century, if you ask me. It's an absolutely astounding piece of work. And then the end with "God Save the Queen," which is actually the earliest recorded song on this album, was done during the Sheer Heart Attack sessions, and they would end their concerts by playing this, and they would continue to do that for the rest of their career. But great version of that as well. Here's the inside. So you get the lyrics and mentions of who wrote what, and some great shots of the guys down there. With the old, it does have Trident on there, which I think is interesting, but then you get the original logo on the red Elektra label. Well, it's going to look a bit orange on the video there, but no, there we go. Different angle. So very cool to have this as the original record. Now I'll show you the Vinyl Me Please version, which they did an amazing job putting this together. For those of you who don't know, Vinyl Me Please is a record subscription service where every month they send out a new LP and a custom print, like an art print and a drink mix, so you can have a drink while you're playing the record. And they do their own exclusive releases, so the colored vinyl, nice packaging. They do an excellent job with it. Very well done. And the thing with Night at the Opera, it was supposed to be the record, I believe, for November. And it didn't come out till December because they had some crazy printing errors with the jacket itself, having off-centered printing, and they weren't going to put that out half-assed. They got rid of all those. There was like 20,000 copies they had to get remade. The vinyl was fine, but just the jacket was messed up. So we waited a while for it to come in, and when it came in, it looks absolutely fantastic. So the front, this part isn't embossed like the original cover is, but the logo and the writing is nice and shiny. It's a very nice finish, super bright white. And they updated it, so it's got the Hollywood Records up here, which is the label they're on now. They do have the Vinyl Me Please tag at the bottom, and some new stuff like a barcode, websites. I think it even has the Facebook/Queen on there. The inside, same deal. Nice heavy jacket, you know, the big cardboard frame on this thing. Nice shiny. And it does say, you know, management 1975, John Reed, which is in the original one it says John Reed. And this one says current Queen management, Jim Beach. They say original recordings made by Queen between 74 and 75. No synthesizers. And the inside is very nice. They did a great job with this too. So you got, you know, some great pictures of them live, which I think is a lot of fun to see that. And a good shot of them again there. And it does say, this final album has been meticulously recreated from the finest technology from the original first generation master mixes. And the record itself is on this amazing purple, like purple marble splatter color. Get the label up here. So that looks so cool. It doesn't come out too good in the video. Again, my lighting isn't the best, but you know, they put the Queen logo on the LP, on the you know, the middle bit there, which they would do on News of the World. But very, very, oh, there you go. This is some of the blue and purples mixed together there. And it sounds absolutely fantastic. They did a great job with this. And I have a video on my Instagram page of when I first got it in and first played it, of how awesome it was to have it. And then this is a thing that goes on the side of the jacket, like this. Just a little bookend. So it's got a little bit of information on the record itself. This is the 71st release they've done. And then the drink mix is called Death on Two Legs on the inside. So you can pause that if you want and take a look at that drink mix. And then the art piece that it came with is something by Megan Bowker, original artwork. So this is meant to go along with the album. And then her information there. So yeah, very lovingly done. Very happy to have this one. I hope to do more from Queen because the packaging is absolutely fantastic on it. It looks great. Very well done. So overall, I absolutely love this album. For me, it's one of my favorite Queen albums. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's very, very high up there. Easily for me, a 10 out of 10. There isn't a bad song on this thing. I know the string of videos I've made recently have all been 10 out of 10s, but sometimes it happens that way, and I felt like reviewing albums I'm really enjoying. So that's it. If you guys have any questions about the Vinyl Me Please release, let me know what you think about it. I believe now you can just buy them on their website. You don't have to be a member anymore to get the exclusives. I think you can just go on their site. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. But really lovingly well done. So we'll do a side-by-side comparison. This is a bit worn because it's from 1975, and this is shiny and new because it's from 2018. But well done. So thank you, Vinyl Me Please, for making this thing, and thank you, Queen, for making some of the best music of all time. So my name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with A Night at the Opera by Queen. 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.